What up YouTube? Play-Doh Bear back at it again, this time with a budget-oriented Technomancer build. A lot of people have asked me, Play-Doh, what do I need to do to get to endgame status on a Technomancer? And guys, look no further. This build will allow you to complete CT15s with ease and get you ready for endgame Technomancing pew-pewing. So let's get right started. Let's get started right with our gear. Starting with our weapon. So the weapon that we're going to be using is of course going to be the tactical AR for the reasons that it is just absolutely too good not to use. High base damage, high crit multiplier, and has that longer range distance, so where you're going to be hitting crits at a longer range than say like a standard assault rifle variant. That being said, for the statuses of this gun, you don't really need to tunnel vision into it too much. As long as you have crit damage and long range damage, you're good to go. The third stat, if you can for best in slot, you can do close range damage. However, if you only have an assault rifle with, let's just say, crit damage or maybe just long range damage, you're going to be absolutely fine. Just use it. The mods are more important. Like mod synergy is a lot more important in early based builds than just raw best in class stats or best in slot stats. That being said, the two mods we are going to be using with this gun is going to be Bone Shrapnel and Anomaly Enhancement. Both received buffs this latest patch on Thursday. We're running Bone Shrapnel because it is by far the best T2 mod for the sole reason that anytime you kill an enemy, you do AoE damage of 203,000 that not only inflicts bleed, but that is on a 1 second cooldown. And one thing I did want to note is I feel like a lot of new players really undervalue AoE damage in this game, and let me tell you, AoE damage in this game is absolutely overpowered. It is what gets you through expeditions to get you that gold timer, right? Because at the end of the day, you are farming with the intention of getting gold, and when you focus too much on single target damage, it is going to cost you time. So that is why we run Bone Shrapnel, because the AoE that it provides, the ad clear that it provides is absolutely insane. The secondary mod we're going to be using for this budget-based build, and by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but this budget-based build is only going to be focused on T1 and T2 mods. There is going to be one T3 mod we are going to be using for this build. However, it is easily obtainable at our boy Tiago, but we'll get to that in just a bit. Now, the reason we're running Anomaly Enhancement is not only that it got a recent buff, but it is the best secondary weapon mod slot that we can go to for a budget-based build, because you receive a passive firepower boost equal to 40% of your Anomaly Power, and we actually have some synergies that Anomaly Enhancement can take advantage of as we get to more of the gear in this build. Now, for your secondary weapon, I don't think you actually need a secondary weapon for this build, but if you do have an Inferno Seed lying around, go ahead and put Anomaly Enhancement and Brain Eater on it, because as I mentioned in my previous Technomancer video, which is a full endgame build guide, which I will link both full game build guides for my Technomancer builds down below, one focusing on the new Borealis set, as well as one with all purple gear, so be sure to check those out as well. But for the same reason we use it on our endgame build, it's the same reason we're going to be using it on our budget build, because there are going to be some maps where you actually are going to be starved for ammo in certain situations, and that's where Brain Eater with critical shots not consuming ammo really plays a big part. For example, Dr. D fight, for example, the Paxian boss, the Backstreet Boys at Drought Palace, and Moloch at Frontline, and etc., etc. Honestly, anywhere you are feeling like you're losing ammo but you can't hit those critical shots, this is a great alternative to use. That being said, our pistol does not matter, so we're just going to completely ignore it. I just use Torment and Agony because I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, it looks absolutely fucking beautiful. Let's go ahead and move on to our armor gear pieces. And just like with any other Technomancer build, you want to focus on bonus firepower, long range damage, and close range damage. And just like I mentioned for the weapon, do not focus too hard on getting the best in slot stats for the gear. Like I said, mod synergy is going to be a lot more important in early game when you're ramping up to end game than focusing too hard on bonus firepower, long range damage, and close range damage. That being said, however, bonus firepower, long range damage, and close range damage is what you're going to be needing on your gear in that order for that end game build. But when you're starting out, if you have something like just bonus firepower, but you have the perfect mods to go with it, go ahead and use that. If you find something with bonus firepower and long range damage that has the mods you need, go ahead and use that, right? But if you are able to farm, and you'll be able to farm more consistently once you are able to complete those gold expeditions using this build, I guarantee you, you will find the best in-slot gears in no time. The mods we're going to be using on our headpiece is going to be Stand Tall, which also received a buff, as well as Radical Therapy. Stand Tall is a really great T2 mod for a budget build because not only does it provide Anomaly Power, it provides Firepower as well. However, it does say when out of cover for more than 5 seconds, but here's the thing, guys. When you are playing Technomancer or just this game in general, when was the last time you actually was able to use cover? Cover in this game, in my opinion, was more designed towards probably the riflemen, to be perfectly honest, so they can just hide behind and chill while you just suffer and get one-shotted. But remember how I said Anomaly Enhancements has a lot of synergies with this build? Because Stand Tall provides both Anomaly and Firepower, because of the Anomaly Power, and because of what Anomaly Enhancement does, which is receive a passive Firepower boost equal to 40% of your Anomaly Power, you're actually getting more damage because you have Anomaly Power thanks to Stand Tall. And why do we run Radical Therapy? Well, anytime you proc Blighted Rounds, your bullets now inflict Toxic, and anytime enemies are inflicted with Toxic, you deal an extra 15% damage. That's why Radical Therapy is such a good T2 mod and is a core mod for any endgame Technomancer build as well. Now let's go ahead and move on to our armor piece. For our armor, we are running Dum Dum Bullets and Perseverance Shield. Now, why are we running Perseverance Shield? I believe with the recent patch update where they buffed P-Shield, as well as fixed a bug where shields would pop up after you have died in expeditions. That was happening quite frequently. Now that those have been resolved, I honestly think this is the go-to defensive mod for anybody that's struggling and requires a defensive mod in their build. However, for this budget-based build, until you reach level 45, you want to be using P-Shield for one of the mod slots. Now, P-Shield, like I mentioned earlier, also got that buff to where it now provides 12,000 shield as opposed to, I believe it was around 8,000 before, which is amazing. Extra 4,000 shield, that is great for survivability. Now, remember when I said earlier, guys, that we will be using one T3 mod in this build, and I just mentioned level 45? Well, that is because once you reach level 45, you will have access to the Robe of the Borealis Monarch. Now, you can always buy this pre-level 45, but you can't actually equip this item until you are level 45. And to reach level 45, you have to complete CT10 Expedition, which this current build with this chest piece will do easily. But once you have reached level 45, you're going to want to swap out this chest piece, and you want to actually use the Robe of the Borealis Monarch here instead. And why do we want to use Robe of the Borealis Monarch? Remember earlier how I said AoE is undervalued and is exceptional at getting you those gold times, because the faster you clear, the faster you're going to be able to get to gold and not silver. Well, Icicle Storm is the mod and is the reason why we are running Robe of the Borealis Monarch. Icicle Storm, Cold Snap, killing enemies frozen by the skill, makes them explode, dealing 252,000 damage in a 5-meter radius. So what does this mean? When there's a bunch of enemies grouped up, pop Icicle Storm, kill one thing, and just watch everything disappear. Now remember, you only want to switch to Robe of the Borealis Monarch from your purple gear here once you reach level 45, because you'll actually be able to equip Robe of the Borealis Monarch, and you can swap out the secondary mod slot for Dum Dum Bullets or whatever mod you need from this build. Now, you don't have to copy this build exactly. This is just how it worked out for me with the gear that I had with what rolled as a permanent T2 mod. So your build may look a little bit different, but as long as you have the same mods, doesn't matter if they're on the head, the chest, the legs, the gloves, the boots, it's all going to work in the same way. So that is why we are going to be using Robe of the Borealis Monarch, and the only T3 mod we are going to be using in this build is Icicle Storm, and it is easily attainable once again at our boy Tiago. That being said, let's go ahead and move on to our pants. We're going to be using Personal Space, which also received a buff. We're going to be also using Crit Stack, which also received a buff. Personal Space received a buff from 15% bonus close range weapon damage to 25% bonus close range weapon damage. And Crit Stack also received a buff, I believe, to its Anomaly stacking. I don't remember the numbers, but it did. And like I said, Anomaly is great for us in this budget build, thanks to Anomaly Enhancement once again on our weapon, giving us a passive firepower boost equal to 40% of your Anomaly power. Now, that being said, some may be wondering, well, why are we using Personal Space? Well, guys, there's no other better mod, and let's be completely honest, for a budget-based build, 25% close 25% bonus damage to close range weapon damage is actually pretty key, because when you're playing Technomancer, while it's ideal you're going to want to be always at that long range distance, alphas are going to be jumping at you. You know, you're going to be W keying and being in a position where that close range damage is going to benefit you. And it is honestly 25% bonus damage to close range weapon damage. And there really isn't a better mod to put in this slot. The second mod we're going to be using here is going to be Crit Stack. And Crit Stack is actually a really, really amazing mod because it builds up a stacking effect that gives you Anomaly Power and Firepower, which is great synergy with our Anomaly Enhancement. One disclaimer I do want to let you guys know is if you are going to be using Crit Stack in any build, please do not use Mitigation of Death with it. Currently, and it has not yet been fixed, if you have both Mitigation of Death and Crit Stack's bonus of the stacking effect will not activate. This game is a little buggy sometimes with mod synergies, and this is one of them. This was originally found out by Dawson, and it is 100% reproducible most of the time. Well, when you say 100%, it should be all of the time. So it is 100% reproducible most to all of the time, to where when you use Mitigation of Death with Crit Stack, the Crit Stack bonus does not apply. And that's also the reason why I prefer P-Shield, not only because of the recent buffs, but I just like the mod. You can also use Damage Absorber as a defensive mod as well. That being said, for our glove pieces, we're going to be using the mods Rejuvenation and Bloodlust. Now, Rejuvenation is actually pretty interesting. You receive 14k firepower and 7k anomaly power and about 41k armor bonus for 8 seconds whenever your health is replenished, with a 10-second cooldown. However, it also lasts for 8 seconds. So theoretically, putting this on a 2-second cooldown. And if you guys are not aware, and we will kind of go over this just briefly on the Technomancer's class tree, but Technomancers receive a passive health regeneration anytime we deal damage to our enemies. And that is why Rejuvenation is not only a great offensive mod for a budget build, but the fact that it provides you armor is a great defensive mod as well. And because of the fact that we will be switching over to the Robe of the Borealis Monarch when we are reaching level 45, we actually lose our defensive mod in P-Shield, and Rejuvenation really makes up for that really, 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 really well, okay? And it also has that Anomaly Power, which once again synergizes really, really well with our Anomaly Enhancement. So a lot of good synergies in this build. The second mod we're going to be using with our gloves here is going to be Bloodlust. And again, I've said this many times, Bloodlust is an amazing T2 mod as well. Killing shots, increasing your firepower that stacks up to 3 times is just amazing. Use it. It is a great T2 mod, pretty much core in, every firepower build as well. That being said, moving to our boots, we're going to be using Critical Analysis and Toxic Lead. Critical Analysis increases critical damage by 15%, and Toxic Lead is what we're going to be using to help us out with getting ammo back. And you can swap Toxic Lead for Trick Up the Sleeve if you don't have an item rolled with Toxic Lead as well. But I do recommend Toxic Lead because, it's 10% more ammo regen, and more ammo regen, the better. However, this may not apply to you until you reach endgame. If you're playing solo and you're endgame and you're using Toxic Lead, sometimes you have that problem with Technomancers where you just deal too much damage and Toxic can't apply to take advantage of Toxic Lead because you literally just one-shot everything. So maybe in that scenario, you may want to just swap out for Trick Up the Sleeve. But most of the time, it's not a problem. Toxic Lead is the go-to mod. Now, with all of that said, let's go ahead and move to our skill tree. And surprise, surprise, nothing changes here. We're going to be using Cold Snap to synergize with Icicle Storm and provide great CC. If at any time you've seen Riflemen run up to you and you're panicking, just press Cold Snap, freeze the motherfuckers, and take care of them, all right? Easy peasy. We're using Blighted Rounds because it's Blighted Rounds, and we're using Blighted Turret because it is Blighted Turret. Let's go ahead and move on to our class here, and I'm just gonna quickly here let you guys know why we are so excited to use Rejuvenation with this budget-based build because of the passive that Technomancers get here. If you see on the bottom here, it says increase weapon leech by 15%. So what does that mean? Anytime you're doing damage to an enemy, you are passively regenning your HP. Now with this game and with how chaotic it can be, you're consistently taking damage and consistently healing damage. So because Technomancers have that passive weapon leech, it really synergizes well with Rejuvenation. But that being said, it's always going to be the standard top tree here, guys. I'm not going to spend too much time into this as I usually do, just because, top tree is very standard. There's really not much you can deviate away from this top class tree, just because it's been tried and true and tested, and it literally is the best node slash tree pestilence to go to when you're doing a firepower Technomancer, whether it's a budget build, whether it's a Borealis build, or whether it's a final endgame purple build. Now, with all that said, guys, let's go ahead and get to a CT15 gameplay with this build, and I promise you, it shits on everything. All right, guys, let's get to that gameplay video of this budget-based build so you guys can see it all in action. Like I said, Technomancers are overtuned, so even this budget-based build in CT15 situations is just very, very good. You just do damage to absolutely everything in your vicinity, whether they're in front of you, whether they're away from you, whether they're right in front of you. Gonna take advantage of that cold snap real quick. Not only for the bonus that cold snap provides with that AoE damage. Ooh, getting frozen here, unlucky. But also because, like I said earlier, the riflemen were literally on my ass. And what better way to get the riflemen off my ass than to cold snap them so I can kill them before they can kill me. Like I said, it's not going to be a speedrun build by any means, because, this is a budget-oriented build. But as far as clearing CT15 content, like, what other class are you going to have this much of, like, a breeze with, comparatively, to using a Technomancer, right? Because of all the synergies that Technomancer has with its top class tree, as well as even the synergies with the basic T1 and T2 mods, which is absolutely insane. Second room of Boomtown here. Let's go. I'm gonna use Cold Snap here just because there's a few riflemen that I don't want to one-shot me. And like I said, you can see Bone Shrapnel just doing work here on all the ads, which is absolutely so fun to see. You don't have to individually kill every single ad. Like I said, AoE is very undervalued in this game. But once you get the hang of it, and you go zoom fast, Bone Shrapnel is just so good. We just used a Cold Snap here because I don't know why. Just felt like using it. It looked kind of cool, not gonna lie. Anytime I use Cold Snap, I feel like a superhero, Cold Snap and just boom, everything dies. But I don't think anybody's going to be having too much of a hard time completing CT15 content using this build, solely because it is just so good for solo. Now, as far as trios go, I don't know if this build will have that much of an impact, but if you're running with like even a generous debuff, like even a heat wave debuff pyre, you guys are gonna be flying. However, I would say that this build is a bit more favorable for solo play, just because the less HP means you have all the damage to smack these guys here. Whether you're close range or long range, personal space is really paying dividends a little bit for that close range. And look at that Cold Snap with Icicle Storm value, guys. That's why when you're level 45 and you can equip that Borealis Monarch and able to use Icicle Storm with Cold Snap, it just opens up a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for here? A lot more options for a lot of maps, right? Rather than blasting everything down individually, you just pop that Cold Snap at that exact time you need it to, and everything just around it dies. Now, if you saw here, I quickly switched to my Inferno Seed, and that's because the Dr. D boss fight situation here really just relies on you to be able to hit him with those headshots and not lose ammo while doing it. So while I don't think you need to utilize this too much, it just really helps. Like, look at that. If I was just using the regular Bone Trap AR here without that Brain Eater mod, I'm pretty sure at some point I would have had to either turn back around and kill some ads rather than focusing Dr. D. And before killing him, he could have maybe popped a freezing turret. The captains could have done some janky BS with their abilities. And just being able to not have to worry about, turning around to kill ads while you're solely focusing on the boss makes Brain Eater really, really good in certain boss fight situations. With that being said, guys, check it out. Budget-based build, completing this expedition in 4 minutes and 2 seconds. And, this isn't with me trying to optimize this for a speed run or anything, just casually going into Boomtown, not really caring about my pathing or anything, just making sure I utilize Cold Snap with Icicle Storm at the correct timings. And guys, like I said, this build is absolutely fire. And that being said, if you guys want to see my endgame builds, whether it's Borealis related or an all-purple build, links down below as usual. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out my YouTube video. Thank you for always stopping by my Twitch. Appreciate every single one of you. And until next time, peace.